First of all, good morning, everybody. Um, Hitting on a few things here today, but if you'll indulge me for a moment, you know, it's kind of special to be here, um, here on Capitol Hill, and especially GSBA. A lot of you guys might not know the story is not included here in this bio, but my brother Hiram, he came out in the '80s, and he wasn't accepted in the black community because he was gay, and he wasn't accepted on Capitol Hill because he was black. And a lot of things have really changed over time, and I just appreciate the opportunity. My brother passed away 17 years ago of HIV/AIDS, and it's a great opportunity. I mean, I got a feeling this guy's somewhere right now smiling because I'm right here on Capitol Hill, a place that he wasn't accepted many years ago because of the color of his skin and not his orientation. But to be right here and to be addressing you guys, I know this guy's happy. So, I just wanted to say that. Thank you. Like he said, my name is Omari Salisbury, founder of Converge Media. From the Central District, went to James A. Garfield High School. Just celebrated 100 years. Real happy about that. And Converge, like I said, 6 years old. A lot of people think that we started in the protest. That wasn't necessarily the case. We're 4 years old going into the protest, and we were just prepared. 4 years every single day reporting and whether it's a blog post, whether it's video, whether it's photos, every single day. And then a few months before the protest, we launched our morning update show so we could give, news and information around COVID to our community. And so what happened with the protest is that preparation met opportunity, and it's unfortunate that the opportunity was precipitated by the murder of George Floyd. But I only bring that up because a lot of times people think I was sitting at home watching the protest, eating a bag of Doritos with a red iPhone, and then I had to run out like, hey, what's happening here? It's really a career's work altogether. I've been in about 63 countries altogether around the world, and in this media space. But very happy to be here. Capitol Hill is very much a second home to me as well. My mom, besides being in media, as a political activist, and I remember, as a kid, actually hanging out with Cal Anderson. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of you guys who followed along during the protest, you found that, the whole world now knows about Cal Anderson. And, I'd be out there talking about the history and the history here at Capitol Hill, and also the shared history between us, the Capitol Hill and Central District. As you know, one of the oldest churches in this whole state of Washington, First AME, is just right there. It's older than the state of Washington, 140 years old. So there's always been a shared history and culture in between the Central District and Capitol Hill. Thank you. So I was posed with a few questions here. One was the intro. Hope I didn't do too bad there. The second is how you think about and report on the topic of safety, and then our experience covering the protest. Whew, that was heavy. And then looking to the future. So we'll jump into that, right? So how do I think about and report on safety in the city? Man, I got a unique perspective maybe, and it's a few different lenses that I look through it as, coming from the Central District of Seattle, and coming from neighborhoods where people are poor and most marginalized. I think a lot of times the majority of our city doesn't realize that poor people and people of color are the highest victims of crime, especially violent crimes, right? But there's some kind of narrative oftentimes that like our community doesn't want public safety, that we don't want to be safe, that we don't want our kids to, not have to worry about walking to school or not and everything else. And so for me in reporting, it's like I've been reporting on crime and issues, in the Central District and even some up here on Capitol Hill for years. But it's never gotten the attention because the victims don't fit a specific demographic, right? And so you got a lot of poor people in the city who are now like, oh, wow, people care about crime now. You know what I'm saying? And it's unfortunate, but because it's now in other neighborhoods. So you've got some people who've been waving their hands for 10, 20 years. You know what I'm saying? But no one's cared. It hasn't been, I've done everything but set my hair on fire, and I think I did that. That's why I'm bald, trying to get city council to care about these murders in D2 and D3. But the silence has been deafening, right? But it isn't until it's just the way it is, y'all. You know what I'm saying? And so it's interesting for me. And so for me then, I get a bunch of phone calls, and it's like, Omari, how come you're not talking about this murder down on 3rd? And Omari, how come you're not? And I'm like, bruh, unfortunately, crime and reporting on and in this city, it isn't a sprint. It's a marathon. Look at the totality of the conversation, right? And so for us, when we think about it, I have to put that to the side so I'm not jaded, right? Because I could really just be jaded in the conversation when people are like, oh, well, it's crime in this community and crime in that community. Because even right now, no one cares about crime. You know what I'm saying? In the Central District, it's whatever. It's accepted. I had a conversation with Brent Jones, who's the superintendent of public schools, when they did a groundbreaking at Rainier Beach the other day, and we were kind of talking about that. There's a encampment that was at that elementary school up Broadmoor or something like that up north, right? So lots of news, lots of attention, people going live, are like, yo, there's tents here, there's this and that. It's like, oh. But when it was 70 gunshots fired in front of that middle school out there on the south end, ain't nobody show up, right? So all that to the side, though, when we look at reporting about crime, I think the best thing for us and the approach that we always take at Converge is to try to tell the whole story. You know what I'm saying? And I think people that know me and know Converge is like, man, we call it like we see it. And the best thing that we can do is to be able to tell you what it is without an agenda. Seattle is so full of agendas, my friend. You know what I'm saying? Oh my goodness. And if you use this word or that word, I'm glad I'm reporting for my community. So I just use my regular words. You know what I'm saying? I'm not caught up in the word soup or blah, blah, blah. And, having a willingness to say what's wrong is wrong. And what's right is right. And we can't as journalists, it seems like, and people who say they're journalists and people who are just in this space, it seems like people don't have a willingness to just put their foot down and to say what's wrong. And we find these equivalencies in reporting. There's a big difference between but and. This person might have had this life journey and they committed a crime. It isn't this person committed a crime, but the reason they're both true. Tell the truth. Let's stop being a la carte about what's happening in our city. You know what I'm saying? We'll never fix things if we just cherry pick the specific things that fit our narrative or fit our belief. We just have to agree on a few things, what is right and what is wrong in our society and in our community. And if we are bold enough to say, hey, this is wrong, then fundamentally, man, you know what I'm saying? Where things are ultimately going to get worse for us. And it's crazy because SPD, they're always real whenever there's murders, especially in the Central District, an unsolved murder and everything else. They really they don't discourage people from being vocal or whatever, but there's really a killer out there, really with a gun, who just really murdered somebody, right? But I for somebody like me, I'm like, hell, man, we need to capture this person. Somebody could be riding the link right rail with my mama who just killed somebody. This is, what I'm saying? We as community have to we are the front line. When you talk about what is, government and what's this, what's that. When crime occurs in our community, man, the more that we're silent about it, we're complicit in it. You know what I'm saying? And man, even if it's just like, this is not okay, making our voice heard. You know what I'm saying? I'm not a police investigator. I don't know how to find a murderer. I don't know but I can definitely say that, man, this is unacceptable in our community. And it's not okay to harbor somebody who's just killed someone. It's not okay to equivalate some of these things that destroy our neighborhoods and find equivalencies for them. It's not. And that's not a left-leaning thing or a right-leaning thing. That's not whatever. That's just, man, Dr. Martin Luther King said, the time is always right to do what's right. There's never a wrong time to do the right thing. And there's never a right time to do the wrong thing. And when we come to talk about safety in our community and everything else, and like I said, in reporting on it, we have to be courageous enough as journalists and members of the media to be able to say that something is wrong. And it can't just be until it's now impacted my neighborhood or impacted my favorite coffee shop or my favorite park. I mean, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. And if we want a safer city, then we need to be able to speak up broadly across things that are here. It's not just in my backyard. I mean, we can all, you got to imagine as well that a place like Capitol Hill has a big voice. And so, of course, y'all should use your voice for Capitol Hill. But you know what? You might want to lend it to some other neighborhoods who ain't got no voice. Just to let them know that you see what's happening, that you care. You know what I'm saying? And if our city kind of did that more, if we lived beyond our districts that they got us in now, and we looked at our city as a whole of how we can make an impact, we might make an impact there. So I would say, just me personally on that particular question, how I go into reporting on something is I just want to be able to be as fair as possible to the story itself. And as well as, it's a lot of times here, I've caught a lot of heat from all kinds of places because it's too easy to forget about the dignity and the humanity of victims. And if I can, how much time do I have? Okay, cool. So I'll be kind of brief on this, but I want to explain something to you. And this is also the power of media in our city. And even though we're small, how something impacted. It was February of last year up there at the Northwest African American Museum, also known as NAM. And this guy, Gregory Taylor, he shot two young women, killed one of them, and then went over the street, and then the police killed him. And the early narrative that was out, the SPD mistakenly said that the shooter and the victims might have known each other. Seattle didn't care. Nobody cared. It must have been a drug deal gone bad. Must have been, who knows? Maybe it was a dispute. Maybe they were drunk. It's the Central District. It was at the Northwest African American Museum. It was across from Jimi Hendrix Park. See, because sometimes as a city, our humanity has an on and off switch. And so that set that all those parameters were set for no humanity. The Central District. Well, the truth of it is that what happened that day is that these two young women who had never been there before to NAM, they came to pick up this young kid who lived in the building, right? Because they were going to go and make music, do stuff young people do. And he went upstairs to get his laptop computer. Well, he went out to go get in the car. And then he was like, I forgot my laptop. And he went upstairs to get his laptop. And when he came back down, Gregory Taylor had shot up the car. And two women shot, and one of them ended up dying, right? And this young man, he runs back in the building. It's crazy. It's chaos. It's everything else, right? And, this affected us personally because his mom, this young man, his mom worked at Converge, right? And so I'm hearing all of this stuff, in real time. But the media initially jumped out, forgot all about the victim, and they said how SPD had shot Greg Taylor. People came up there, they were wanting to vigil, they wanted to march, they wanted this and that, and believe me, there was a whole community that got mad at me after this, right? And I went on air, I called Seattle Police Department, I said, you guys need to update what you're saying. You're telling people that the victim and the shooter knew each other. And because of that, people don't care. And this SPD was like, no, we're not changing anything. So I called all my reporter friends. I called a few different people, including Capitol Hill Seattle blog, like, man, we got to pressure SPD to change whatever. They refused. So I went on air and I told people that Anais Valencia, who was the victim who died there, that this young girl didn't know anybody. That this, you know what I'm saying, that the narrative was wrong. And within 1 hour, every TV station in this city changed their whole story. Every single one of them, right? But also what happened is all of a sudden, Seattle found its humanity. All these calls, where can we find a GoFundMe? How can we do a GoFundMe? How can we raise money? How can we be whatever? You see what I'm saying? And so a few different things happened there. Is that one, in all the reporting that was out there, it was fueling this police and black community narrative because they had no intention to even give the victim any dignity in their reporting. It wasn't until we came along and said, hold up, you ain't going to forget about these people who were killed here. And you're going to make this guy who shot them a martyr? It don't matter to me if he's black. If it happened in my neighborhood or whatever, he was wrong, like clearly wrong, But that's the power, though, as well, of when media and when journalists don't just go with the status quo. We the little engine that could. All these reporting resources out here, and everybody went with a police press release. As usual, we saw that they put out their press releases in 2020 as well, and they just went with a police press release. And in doing so, denied the victims any dignity in death. So I know I kind of, extended some, but just to tell you that it's important in the reporting. And that's one of the biggest things here is when people report, especially victims of violent crimes here, a lot of times the depth of the article, the humanity that comes through is based upon where the murder occurred. A lot of times, in our neighborhood, it's not so much. So, right. And I would just say that the last part here I kind of hit on is looking beyond law enforcement and government structures. Man, I just think that the internet's a crazy place, man. And if you want like fair-minded conversation, that's probably where you should look for it because, otherwise, I mean, it's just weird. Our studio's First Avenue in Pioneer Square, and when I turn on the news and on the internet, everybody's telling me it's burning to the ground. So, you know what I'm saying? But we're still here. And my thing disappeared. I think that the other one was about the protest, what it was like reporting a protest. Anybody in this room who was like up here on the Hill or impacted or anything with protests? Raise your hand. So I'll say this, and it's only because it's GSBA, because, man, it's hard for me to talk about this protest, but I think that this is actually a worthy audience, and the first thing that I would say is that if you're like me and you're still impacted over 2 years later, and you find yourself sometimes in bits of sadness or in tears or still confused at what happened, then first of all, that you're not alone. That's something that I still deal with. 30 some odd days, that went from extreme police violence to extreme community violence with some interesting spots in between, for sure. But I saw too much that I can't unsee. So much amazing things too, for sure. I remember I used to walk around and kind of end every night over by the memorial wall where the candles. And one thing that was crazy with everything that was going on, and because people couldn't go to funerals and things, that wall that kind of started off as a memorial to people killed by police violence, so many people were there. It's like, man, my aunt died of COVID. I can't make it to the funeral. I just wanted to be around other people, you know what I'm saying, who might be also feeling a state of loss. I can go on and on with so many things there with the protests, but I will say this, is that I knew that it was just important to just be who we are, and that was just to be fair and just call it like we see it. People who know my story, we was beat up. Me and my brothers, we was beat up in that same precinct when I was like 15 years old. You know what I'm saying? Man, they beat our ass up in there. I had every reason to be there on that Western Barricade wall, jaded, mad, upset, whatever. But that wouldn't have served the highest purpose, and the highest purpose that I could serve. And at the time, you gotta forget, we didn't realize we were talking to the world. We thought we were just talking to the Central District, right? And then somebody's like, "Hey, bro, there's 700,000 people watching right now." It was wild. But I mean, realizing that we were just, or at least the focus being just to our community, kept us super grounded during the whole thing, right? But one of the takeaways for us was just that, it wasn't perfect as far as coverage, but we just tried to be fair. And I used to tell people, man, if you want activist media on any side of this, go tune in over there. It's fine. You'll get whatever message you're seeking. But all we could do is put the camera there and really let the camera, tell the story. And I'm thankful, and as a company, Converge, thankful to the people of Capitol Hill. Like 100%, right? On a lot of different ways that, the support, Capitol Hill supported Converge. Capitol Hill still does support Converge. On an individual level, businesses, it's always, hey, Big O, come in. But, a takeaway, and I talked to people about this, about the Seattle protests, and I think people should also realize, too, that there's a difference between the Western Barricade and Chop Chaz. The Western Barricade, June 1st to June 8th. You know what I'm saying? And I can easily define it, minute by minute, second by second. Chop Chaz, I don't know, it might be 10 years before I could display it. But the Western Barricade, sticking right there between June 1st and June 8th, and I talk about this a lot, there's no other city in America where thousands of white people would come out day after day and face extreme police violence, all in the name of uplifting the value of black lives. You think this will happen in Atlanta? You think in Houston? You think in any other neighborhoods in a city with only 50,000 black people? The fact that this neighborhood showed up day after day after day. Of course, other people came in as well, but it wouldn't have been sustained if it wasn't for the people of Capitol Hill. Now, whether you were however you view the protest, I can say this, that was especially, like I said, the Western Barricade, that Capitol Hill was there. It was funny, I did a podcast, and they were like, what could people, it was about Capitol Hill, oddly enough, forget the guy's name, but he was like, man, what could people learn? And I told him, what can people on Capitol Hill learn? And I was like, people on Capitol Hill learn? I said, it's more like, what could other neighborhoods learn from Capitol Hill? You know what I'm saying? On how to show up and things like that. And so it's a good opportunity for me to say thank you to you guys and thank you here. And we're forever changed by the protests, and when it still just impacts. We never expected that. We, I didn't even have a holder for my phone. No one expected that. And so if you went through the protests and you find yourself every once in a while still got tears like I do right here, just know you're not alone. And that I wish I had a better way to explain or whatever, but that you're not alone and that you're appreciative. And the last thing I would say is when you said optimistic or outlook and everything else, is that, man, we got to remember that buildings don't make a community. People make a community. If we want a safer community, we have to strengthen our ties within our neighborhoods, within everything else. And I know it's tough now, man. I don't even recognize my neighborhood no more. It's been gentrified, displaced. It's a similar story up here in Capitol Hill, a lot of moving in, moving out. But when neighborhoods are strong, when neighbors are strong and businesses and business owners and they know each other and everything else, it's impossible to eliminate crime 100% for all kinds of different reasons or whatever. But, we can make safer and better and stronger communities and neighborhoods if we're intentional about the relationships that we want to have with each other. If we're intentional about speaking to each other, if we're intentional about, there's a new business over here, let me go check them out. Oh, there's a new neighbor right here, let me help welcome you here. Hey, you know what? You might not want to go that way later because it's whatever. You know what I'm saying? That's how we're better. If we sit in silos, and unfortunately, my friends, this city is becoming more siloed every day. If we sit in silos, that creates an opportunity, a vacuum for things like lack of safety to come into place. So again, I want to say thank you, man. I appreciate you. I'm so thankful to the GSBA. I'm so thankful to the people and the businesses here on Capitol Hill. I'm so thankful that, this is so much. This is my second home. It's perfect. See, I got 2 home neighborhoods now, Central District and Capitol Hill. You know what I'm saying? And it's so much like home up here on this hill. And every time I walk around up here, I'm greeted so warmly. And so I just, again, want to say I appreciate y'all. If there's anything that we can do, like Converge Media, especially if you guys got different initiatives going on up here on the Hill, if there's any new businesses opening and we can pop in and do like some Instagram reels or something like that, we want to be supportive of the businesses on Capitol Hill because you guys have definitely been supportive of us. You know what I'm saying? We're just a phone call away. Thank you.